So I was pretty sure I wanted to be an engineer since the very start. And one of the main reasons for it was that I am highly inspired by my uncle who is an engineer. So he was the first engineer in our family. Growing up, he was somebody we all looked up to in terms of being the really techie modern person in the family. He is also the one who's instrumental in setting up so many of the foundations of Chitle Bandhu growing so well. And somehow that made me believe that I should become an engineer so that I'm taken a little seriously. And I think at a family level, we were far more informal than what we are today in terms of how we run the business. And I believe that there was merit to being informal because that sort of exposed us to the casualness of how business is run as families in India. But growing up, we saw that every member in the family was committed to working maybe 18-20 hours a day, sometimes sleeping less than 6 hours a day as well, and just being there all the time. So I think that itself was good enough exposure to the idea that do we want to do this or do we not want to do this? So I was pretty sure that hey, this is what I want to do. What I want to do inside the business was something that I eventually figured out as I joined and started taking up more projects, started getting more exposure into diverse spectrums. Maybe during the peak season where back then things used to be all manual, right from filling up boxes with workers in the store to actually sitting on the dry fruit counter and seeing what the elders in the family were doing, to general sitting with my father or my uncle in meetings and just hearing how they communicate. To a point where eventually, as I was in engineering and everything, I would be part of helping my grandfather out, writing emails or coordinating with other foreign companies which we were trying to collaborate with. So that sort of created that exposure very softly, very uncharacteristically, and very freely. So I think that was inviting enough, I would say.
Especially in India, between 7 to 8, you'll have a prayers time. Then as a part of a study matter, you will recite your tables. So in spite of that, do you think that the Chitle family kids are actually revising the term sheet, looking at and finding out what is the balance that is required? What is the strategy? I mean, is that something that is on a plate?
Well, it is.
Namaskar. Welcome to Passionate Pulse Podcast. I'm Pranali, welcoming you to the next episode of Passionate Pulse Podcast, where I'm bringing a different and a very eminent personality on the show, Indraneel Chitle, the fourth generation of a Chitle Group, and he's expanding the business at a globe level and at a very different innovative technologies that exist in today's world. Starting with the IoT to AI, he is looking forward to imbibe them all and looking forward for food engineering at a very different angle. Starting with the nutrition quality to controlling the processes at the back office, he is the head for it, and the factory that I'm sitting here, which is 2 lakh square feet area, and a very well managed factory, starting at the entry point to the exit point, very well mannered. You cannot figure out whether this business we are looking at is operating in an India small town. It's not a small town, but it's a little bit of outskirts of a Pune, which is very industrial zone and operating at that discipline. So we are looking forward to unfold some of the facts, what the family businesses can do to scale up. However, what essentially they have to put in to make sure that that scale up happens at a globe and at a very innovative levels. So let's unfold this journey of a business, how the fourth generation family members can still join the hands without dissolving the equity of the group. And in spite of that, opening new groups. So we are looking at the 5 subsidiaries of the Chitle Group and the businesses which are flourishing and doing the very close handshakes. So let's open to that journey. Hi, Indraneel.
Hi.
It's glad to meet you, especially in your factory.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here. Happy to host you and glad to be part of your podcast as well.
Yeah, wonderful to meet you. And I just love the the environment, the vibes, and starting at the gate when I entered. Since then till here, I think I saw a lot of professional treatments everywhere. At some points, even I was banned to enter, which was unlikely in India hospitality structure that I would say. But this factory being operated at a very disciplined professional structure that gave me the confidence that any product that I purchase from you is very safe to consume at any point of entry, or whether it gets transported or whether it is consumed locally, it's the same all the way. So thanks for taking out time and giving me the red carpet entry to your factory.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. So, Indraneel, especially when you onboarded, if I look at your professional background and then what you actually established or set out to do, how do you sort of related your study and then, march the journey for your business expansion? So, that is a very different odds that I figured it out. EXTC engineer coming to the food industry, then doing the management, taking a different training into the, going outside and learning about the machineries. So, how does it like really relate?
So I was pretty sure I wanted to be an engineer since the very start. And one of the main reasons for it was that I am highly inspired by my uncle who is an engineer. So he was the first engineer in our family. Growing up, he was somebody we all looked up to in terms of being the really techie, modern person in the family. He's also the one who's instrumental in setting up so many of the foundations of Chitle Bandhu growing so well, including the RFID billing system in the stores or the way the cattle management system in our businesses, to the modernization of and implementation of a lot of data and computer systems into Chitle Bandhu.
Right.
So that way, back in the 90s, back in early 2000s, when computers were, like a novelty thing, it was like a sanctity-based thing where you had to be very cautious in how you used a computer. He was the one who introduced or exposed us to all of those. So that sort of made us believe that, this is the cool thing to do. And I think we continue to stand by that inspiration that, he's always leading from the front in terms of how we take pioneering steps in technology. And somehow that made me believe that, we should be, I should become an engineer so that I'm taken a little seriously. So the trade didn't matter, but he was an electronics engineer. So I followed it blindly that, that is what I want to become. And eventually ended up into the food industry.
Okay. So while you were growing up, that thought process was already there. Like, eventually I'll be supporting my family business or growing further.
Yeah.
But it's just that the path that you took was because of your uncle's set out. And of course, that did help, right? So how did it came together towards the end? Like when you decided to take up, the leadership position with the Chitle, and whether there was a qualification for you to be entered?
Well, so I think at a family level, we were far more informal than what we are today in terms of how we run the business. And I believe that there was merit to being informal because that sort of exposed us to the casualness of how business is run as families in India. I think, we talk about work-life balance and so many other factors. They don't kind of exist that seamlessly in ownership mindset of businesses. There's something that have come now in recent generations where everybody's sort of figured out what the balance is. But growing up, we saw that every member in the family was committed to working maybe 18-20 hours a day, sometimes sleeping less than 6 hours a day as well, and just being there all the time. So I think that itself was good enough exposure to the idea that, do we want to do this or do we not want to do this? And I think it was cool because we were adopting technology, we were doing new things, we were on the frontiers in terms of leading how we grew the business. So I was pretty sure that, hey, this is what I want to do. What I want to do inside the business was something that I eventually figured out as I joined and started taking up more projects, started getting more exposure into diverse spectrums. And eventually then, to validate all of my informal learning of business running versus my engineering knowledge, I decided to study management as well. And, sort of reinforce the principles that I have sort of vaguely learned on field by the proper guidebooks of management and sort of get into that role of running the business and enjoying it. So I think the credit to me being into the family business and getting that mandate to run goes back to the 3 generations who sort of build a foundation for us to lead on to. And I think how to continue that is something that is my responsibility as somebody who's running the business for the family.
So while you were growing up, during the school days itself, you started taking the responsibilities?
I wouldn't say responsibilities, but then we were given tasks. Like,
okay. As a family tradition?
As a family tradition, or more so about just being exposed to what we are doing. So like maybe during the peak season where back then things used to be all manual, right from filling up boxes with workers in the store to actually sitting on the dry fruit counter and seeing what the elders in the family were doing, because dry fruits were expensive commodity which the family managed themselves rather than outsource it to people. To general sitting with my father or my uncle in meetings and just hearing how they communicate, to a point where eventually, as I was in engineering and everything, I would be part of helping my grandfather out, writing emails or coordinating with other foreign companies which we were trying to collaborate with. So that sort of created that exposure very softly, very uncharacteristically, and very freely. So I think that was inviting enough, I would say, and I hope we continue building that kind of a process.
Wonderful. So once you set out to, come here, that time the division was not defined. But since you had an overall vision or overall idea that how the things operate, so you started niching down yourself like, okay, these are the plants or, probably the areas that I should go further or, remove the,
Clutter around it.
Yeah.
I think.
And also improvise the processes and improve the efficiency. So from that point of view, your journey started, or that was your first project?
Yes. So I think because I was an engineer, I enjoyed being in the plants more because that is where the activity was happening. While they were big plants and they were employing a lot of people, we were not as automated as we are today. So this I'm talking about maybe 15, 18 years ago. So it was a different India, different world dynamics, different marketplace as a GDP for this nation as well. So everything was much more localized than what it was today. And everything was much more family intensive than what it was today. So we decided to take a conscious step as a family that, we need to professionalize as a business, take one step back from being operative in the business and actually think more on strategy and see how we want to increase. So part of that strategy was that, where can we automate and actually get our dependency on skill-based jobs down and ensure that that skill is translated into a good machine language where we repeat that output consistently thanks to automation. So then manual jobs were something that got replaced first. Then we reskilled the people to sort of become operators better. I think credit also goes to the fact that everything has now gone to a touchscreen where people adopted phones and touchscreens as linearly as they adopted our automation inside the plants. And that's why we were actually able to retrain our people with a better purpose and actually achieve better goals in the organization. So that's why that is how it started. And eventually what I came to realize is that, we can do all what we want in the plant. But if you're not marketing that well enough, and if you're not selling what we do as a process or as a brand well enough, it won't work. So that is how I focused my attention later into marketing and sales and then eventually finance. And then sort of got that hang of how to run the business better.
So as a kid, I mean, this is like, off the record type of a question I can say. As a kid, when everybody is, grooming in the family, the way everybody will have a ritual, especially in India, between, 7 to 8, you'll have a prayers time. Then, as a part of a study matter, you will recite your tables. So in spite of that, do you think that the Chitle family kids are actually revising the term sheet, looking at and finding out what is the balance that is required? What is the strategy? I mean, is that something that is on a plate?
Well, it is. And I think I would say that way that pressure to be highly meritorious in academics was not on us. And I believe that is also the reason we were self-motivated enough to deliver well. But along with that, we were also encouraged to do many other things which were not necessarily academic at that age.
Right.
So like I remember opening up VCRs or, cassette players back then. And just trying to fix it and probably not end up doing it. But then we were never scolded for doing something like that. We were encouraged that, if you've opened it up now, fix it yourself. But that sort of builds that ability where you start taking ownership of your actions.
Right.
And I think that is very important to be interested at a younger age. I think in today's parenting, where even I see sometimes where I have to caution myself as a parent that, we over protect our kids in terms of exposure. So the more free they are, the better they will be at innovating and fixing problems themselves, because that is part of how businesses are run. You're fixing problems all the time.
Right. So that has come in a long way for you. Like even though you are operating such a big factory, this was your first plant that was designed, right?
Yeah.
And the type of machinery that is imported over here, it is from Denmark or?
It's from across the world.
Oh, wow.
But mostly European, because back then when we were setting up, European equipment was one of the best equipments when it came to food safety. So as you said, there are certain areas we didn't allow you to go today because of your health concerns. The point behind it is that, food is something that is consumed. It needs to have the sanctity around it. So if there is somewhere where we know there is a hazard that could be prevented, we'll prevent it. So if that means that, if I am coughing, I'll avoid going to the plant as well. And that is where I think the standard of food that we want to manufacture, be it the equipment, be it the process, be it the ingredients, be it the way it is marketed, be it the way it is packaged. We want to be world class in our appeal as a brand. We might be making products which might be very Indian in nature, or our appeal or target customer might be very Indian or Maharashtrian also for certain products. But then the process around building that is world class, where any other good food brand will also adopt the same standards that we do. And that is what the approach for Chitle Bandhu has been, that we are very happy to respect the tradition, but we want to cherish innovation and we want to be benchmarked against the best in the world.
Right. So if we look at your history, when you're talking about just an innovation, there are multiple innovative products that you have launched. So how the product launching happens, what is your generally a cycle for any product launch, and what goes beneath? I think many of us as a consumer would like to know, what goes beneath. As an engineer or as a food engineer, everybody is interested to learn about it. So what it is really?
So there are a couple of aspects to it. I think one is, of course, that food is a emotion. So whatever we make or whatever we want to sell eventually in the future, we want to make sure that it gives a emotional satisfaction to the customer. So how do we protect that? First is the priority that is given to our R&D team when it comes to building something. That are you getting that or feeling out of the first bite? If that is there, then that is a product worthy of thinking to be taken to the next stage. When that happens, then that is when the commercialization comes into the picture, that how do we want to build this? What price do we want to fix this? Is there a competition around it? Especially with innovation and Indian foods, there is just no benchmarking in the market. So very often we are setting the benchmarks, including the rules with FSSAI. So then how do we want to define this? What is the value addition to this? What is the nutrition profile for this? What price point do we want to fix to this? All of this research then boils down into a product which is sort of like a prototype, which we think is good. So then that is tested internally. Based on those feedbacks, it is tested with secondary partners, where our distributors, our sales teams, our other partners across channels get a feedback around it. Once we refine that, we probably launch that in the store, get a deep stick feedback about it from the customer. And only when it crosses a certain critical mass is when we start packaging it and then distributing it.
Wow.
So all of this cycle also goes in parallel with the food safety standards, where we are validating what's happening with the ingredient. We're doing a shelf life study in real time as well as in the lab. We are doing the nutrition profile along with this. That takes its own time. So by this time, all of it is done. It usually takes around 18 months by the time a product actually hits the market.
Wow.
And we've tried to see how we can bring that down to 12 months or 14 months. But then what we've come to see is that the most ethical way to do it is that, if we are saying 1 year shelf life, we have to test it out over 1 year in shelf life before we say it is a 1 year shelf life.
Makes sense.
And once that is done, that is when we launch the product.
So you're okay to spend that much of time on the innovation, and you are allowed to do so many experiments around it.
So the price of innovation is where I think the channel and the marketing breadth helps you. So how soon can you deploy this product at a scale is where I think the innovation needs to be justified. So very often we can be innovative for the sake of being innovative, but if there is not a product market fit, then that becomes a challenge. So getting that product market fit right for your innovation becomes the most important part of it.
Yeah, and especially in the food industry, I think it goes with the product launch or soft launch, right?
Very true.
Versus the other industries where they can show the prototype, show some pseudo models. So this is not the case.
Like with a phone, you can have a beta and something else, and then some bugs around it and get it. But imagine a food which is not right being consumed, and you have a hospital case waiting for you. So we can't afford that. So that is why it needs to be well invested and well planned.
It's a very critical thing for even for the soft launch, right? So when you talk about the nutrition, especially the products which are longer duration or they are non-perishable or whatever, so those are the ones which I would really love to focus, especially when you had launched your Bale cereal bars. And I mean, we love the product, although it was launched initially in India. And somebody had gifted us from India.
Got it.
Prior to it came to the Bay Area and all. So that time we were very fascinated to see such bars, because having a bar when you are just walking out of gym or yoga, you need a bar because then there is a huge day lined up for you. So when somebody handed over me that bar, it was a great feeling. First of all, it connected back with the original times of eating bale and everything. And at the same time, it gave me the liberty of carrying that everywhere. And, whenever I feel and I was missing something, I could have that. And at the same time, it has got a good health value versus the other cereal bars that I could consume. Like there are multiple ingredients that you can see which are synthetic food ingredients that we consume as a
natural thing.
So how do you make sure that, you are overseeing all that and making that nutrition value intact? I mean, how your R&D really operates at that level?
So when it comes to something which is like a bhel bar that we are talking about, this is a 10 rupee product. It is a very impulse buy product. So I think the nutrition profile is something that came as a secondary aspect to it as much as it was about anchoring it at a point. Because 10 rupee is a market that in India is the most biggest market in the nation. So then what better can we do at 10 rupees was the second big question that came into it. So if everybody is doing it in certain quality of oil or certain quality of fat, can we do better than that? Then we realize that, instead of everybody where they are using a lot of sugar instead, can we go into a bake format with a different kind of a binder where instead of frying it, can we move to bake? So that reduces the oil load. So we probably have a 10-15% better product in the market than what a 10 rupee standard packet gives. Then the third was in the aspect that, the mobility that we wanted to bring to our customers. So if you see Indian namkeens, all the binge bar range is basically namkeens in a bar.
Yeah.
So the challenge with eating namkeens in India is that you either have to pour it on your hand or you have to pour it in a bowl. And it's not a shared thing. It's intended to be shared, but it's very difficult to do it on the go. So how could we bring a different form factor which is more personalized into Indian namkeen was sort of the brief that I had in my mind. And that is how we sort of accidentally made cornflakes chiwda bar first.
Okay.
Because an American friend of my sister's actually said that, I wish you could make your spicy chiwda in a bar format. And that was like, cue enough for me that, hey, if this is something that is more globally appealing, that's fit with the Chitle idea that, we want to make products accepted across the world. And that's where we started with chiwda bar first. But we realized that chiwda is too expensive as a product because of the groundnut oil that we use. So we couldn't market it at 10 rupees. Then what do we do at 10 rupees which is more marketable but ethically correct? So that is where the other products came which were baked. Now the simple rule around it, besides all the ethical and moral causes, is that, as a brand, we stand by the thought that we will not sell something that we will not eat ourselves. So would I sell something which is high fructose corn syrup and eat it myself? I'll never do that. So then this should not be having that. And that is how sort of we boil down into the philosophy of making food that, we have to make food which we'll eat ourselves. And that is where I believe is the success with our customers as well, because they treat us like a family member. The brand, although the size and the stature can vary based on how analysts want to look at it, how bankers want to look at it, and how customers want to look at it. The customers treat us as an extension of their home food. So we are very sure about the fact that that is what we want to keep retaining as we innovate. So we should be next best to home. I don't think so we can be ever as good as anything that's made at home. But whatever is next best to home is what Chitle Bandhu has to be.
Okay, so you try to make sure that that trust throughout it is retained.
Is retained and is reflected in the product as well.
Even the packaging I see now, it has become more finer and more industrial standard wise, accepted, where, you can keep that product in Costco, Walmart and others like it. So how that packaging also, I would like to understand that journey too. Because initially Chitle having no branch to multiple branch to creating a franchisee business and even focusing at these micro level changes is a huge, scaled version.
Correct.
And eventually, even you have, broken out your own rules, broken out your own brand statements. It was, I can see that every time a new butterfly is flying from the cocoon and the new cocoon is getting formed.
Correct.
So we'd like to know those macro level progress.
So I would say, I think that butterfly story is so cyclical of life that, you have to break out of your own shell and fly. So I believe as family businesses, especially multi-generation, we have to keep challenging our own beliefs and pushing those and flying out of it so that we expand our horizons. So that's part of the ingrained philosophy, I would say, at Chitle Bandhu. I think the other aspect is that, what has happened over the last couple of years is that instead of retailing our products only in our store, we also distribute our products. And our product distribution happens in around 10 states in India. Along with that, around 35 countries is where we are exporting our products. All of these markets are third-party retailers. They are not our branded stores. So in third party, we have maybe in a supermarket 5,000 brands competing for shelf space just like one of. So how do we make ourselves visible in a third party environment where I don't even get to see the customer?
Right.
Was the big challenge. And while doing that, how do we make sure that they trust an Indian brand who's making Indian products to be bought? So especially with mithai, where I think the experience of buying mithai historically, like 5,000 years, has been about going to the halwai, buying it there, packing it in front of you and buying it, to moving them to a pack where, we don't even know who the customer is, but they're opening it and eating it and relishing it, and they'll only let us know if they have a complaint.
Yeah.
So that is where the packaging design and the brand outlook starts playing a very important role. So you have to be appealing enough. You have to be noticeable enough. Having that conviction in your packaging design itself, where you have to show that, hey, we are a brand. And hey, we are somebody that you should pick up when you're noticing us. And that way, that notice and pickup should happen without my salesperson or my branded window or my retail outlet not being there.
Right.
So that is where that design comes into the picture, and we've been progressing gradually towards it. So we still kept that ethnic Indian feel to our packaging, but we've made it in a manner which is more appealing to people in a wider spectrum across.
Because what I see, many people, like the many family businesses, are now started copying your packaging.
Yeah.
If you look at it, you can easily make it out the ingredients list and everything that you see. Many a times people are just, mirroring out.
Correct.
Without even meticulously going inside and, really observing it. So that's where the things changes. If somebody takes out your food and then goes and do the, post analysis, then the things comes out even or odd.
So
depending on.
I would take it as a compliment that more people are copying us.
Yeah.
So that means we are setting the right trend.
Yeah.
Of course, now when it comes to people copying anybody, I think it's a market reaction to how things move. Building scale and building great systems becomes the most important aspect. So what I'm confident about is that, the systems and the scale that we build is quite robust enough to tackle anybody who's trying to copy us. So as long as we are ahead of the curve in setting that trend, copying is a compliment I take. I would say.
Another thing that I would like to ask about, because Chitle has been, essentially into the retail marketing.
Correct.
And in the retail, the business works very differently, especially now with the supermarket era that we see in India. The things are very differently placed. The algorithm for the retail marketing is very differently placed. Depending on how much percentage is going to the retail marketing, based on that, they'll display your products on the shelf line and everything. Whereas the e-commerce works on again, it is also a marketing, but it is at a digital side. So what do you really see as a source to both the industries? What are the different factors that you observe, and, what you really have to cater or serve to be, stand out?
So I'll rather tell you the commonality of it before I get into the differences of it. So the commonality is that, the standard Hindi saying that jo dikhta hai wo bikta hai.
Yeah.
So unless and until you're visible, you will never be sold.
Yeah.
So how great is your visibility and how great is your availability becomes the most important aspect for it. Now, if there are supermarkets who can get you so many customers, and if you're not visible there, it is a challenge. So you should be doing that. But similarly, with e-commerce, you probably have to spend a lot of money to direct your people to direct a standard person from an ad to your website.
Yeah.
And that way, the algorithm is even more better tailored, where you know that, if 100 people land onto your website, 2 are going to convert into a cart checkout or something like that, which is like a standard e-commerce thumb rule, I would say. So what now is happening with brands is what I see is a maturity coming into the channel, where traditional brands like us, which were very heavy on physical distribution, have now realized that, hey, there is a new customer on e-commerce that we can tap and actually test and validate our beliefs onto new products as well. And similarly, we've also seen that traditionally e-commerce or D2C driven brands have come to realize that, there is no alternative to brick and mortar, because at the end of the day, even in a mature economy like US, the total business on e-commerce of overall business generated in the country is not more than 15%. In India, it's probably 14-15%. It's only China where it's gone more than 20%, and that's also thanks to the extended lockdowns that they had. So that's again probably going to take a reverse trend.
Yes.
So brands have to realize that they can't really treat different channels differently for profiling their customers. It's more about the customer having the ability to choose you irrespective of where they go. So how are you as a brand actually repositioning yourself to be an omni-channel brand, where it doesn't matter where the customer is shopping? How are you available there? And how are you converting that visibility or availability into a sale is where the branding plays a very important role. And that's why, it becomes a mix of plug and play options where certain things you do better and market on e-commerce better. Certain things you market better in supermarkets. Certain things you do only focus on general trade and distribution markets. And then certain things you keep the novelty for your physical stores. Otherwise, why will people come to your store if everything's being available in a supermarket? So how do you innovate this omni-channel presence and where create each channel to be individually viable is what is the important play that a marketing person in any organization needs to understand. Previously, even we didn't understand this well, and we would say that e-commerce is separate, this is separate, let's not mix together. But now we've come to realize that instead of the customer being like this, where every customer was being bracketed separately, now the customer is like this. It's at the end. Which channel the customer chooses could be anyhow. As a brand, we have to be present across the channel. So this, like breadth first search to depth first search is the approach change that I would say has come thanks to it. And that way, I think what becomes important is where do you define the right product mix and where do you appeal what to that customer becomes very important as a learning. So e-commerce works better when bundled. Physical commerce works better when, transacted in the shortest amount of time. Experience driven sale that happens in our stores is very different because it is all about showing the range and actually building that brand and customer retail. So understanding these nuances and building that out becomes more important. So it's more about bringing synonymous identity and having localized approach rather than having differences and distinction in it is my approach towards modern businesses, I would say.
That's a perfect way to look at it. But when you said about the outlet will have something that is not available on other channels. Then there are many other parts of globe which are deprived of it. So what is your strategy for them?
So I believe you interacted with us first at BMM, and that was also with the idea that we were just about a month away from launching the store in Bay Area. So we are on this mission where that way we are very soon going to be at about 10 stores in North America. We have more store options coming in Australia, in the Middle East. Also fully Europe by next year when trade regulations with Europe ease with India. So that way what we've again come to realize is that store business is a great marketing prospect as well because we get to showcase the brand.
Yeah.
So that way now we've started inculcating store business as part of our distribution game plan. So you'll get to see more of it and you'll get to experience more unique things available at store which probably you'll not get on e-commerce or not get in a supermarket.
Yeah.
And that is how we want to keep the customer engaged with the brand rather than the product.
Yeah, because this is what happens every year when we come back to India for our family visit. We make sure that we visit the outlets which has different products and we carry them back. But then the situation has to, we have to bridge the gaps somehow or the other. Yeah, so we are looking forward for that, flourishing journey of your different outlets.
Yes, we are very hopeful because we've been getting a stellar response in the Bay Area.
Oh, wonderful. But not just the Bay Area, there are many other parts and I think you will go massive over there. Best luck for that. And we're looking forward, how that things come out. So for those channels as well, you will be producing the whole products in your factory, which is set out in India, or do you have any plans to expand further and, depending on how the logistic goes, depending on how the policy rule, as you said, there are stringent policies in Europe especially. So, how you are looking forward to.
So at this moment, we are very firmly committed to the idea of manufacturing only in India because what we realize is that, from a quality assurance point of view, we have a great control in terms of what we make here and give our customers as an experience. If that volume crosses a critical load over the next 2 years, maybe we could consider doing some localized manufacturing in the future. But as of today, we don't really have a timeline to it. Secondly, I think the biggest challenge that comes with the milk products and the mithai that we manufacture is that it is all made from buffalo milk. Buffalo, as we commonly call it, is the Indian water buffalo. So it is a very indigenous animal. And the quality of milk that a buffalo produces is something that is very crucial towards making that mithai very milky and luscious.
Yeah.
So how are you able to replicate that kind of supply chain abroad where the climatic conditions are not very good for the buffalo to survive is a challenge that we have to adopt. So this requires a much more deeper thought than just simply localizing and procuring with cow milk and doing it there, where we will probably not be able to give the standard that a customer expects from us. So that's why we are also in that observe mode right now. We are studying, we are evaluating multiple options, and once we cross a critical load, we would probably think about localizing. But right now we are happy with the Make in India initiatives that we are also part of
Uh-huh.
at this moment.
No, this is a great thing to, observe. When the supply chain improves and eventually you are at a stature where the milk that gets produced over here, which is
Yeah.
very high quality
Yes.
milk, and if you can, export that and you start that, then there are. But the good part that you made sure that you're talking about is you're open to a lot of ideas at this
Yes.
point of time, which couple of generation backs, if you would have talked and if you have heard multiple interviews with the Chitle, they were like very reluctant on a lot of ideas. And now the phase that is coming with the, different brands across, and especially the Chitle, they are so proud to take it that, we are open to the ideas and we are open to innovate. We are open to looking out, to the new possibilities.
Correct.
And that's what embraces me more right now. And it connects with the youth, especially that, we are open to experiment out. And at a different levels, we are ready to break our barriers.
True.
So that's a new phase that we are looking and observing as an Indraneel for the Chitle. So Indraneel, when you, this is another part that I wanted to touch base very quickly. The type of machinery that is here and the type of processes or the automation that are going, starting from washing the containers or the crates till even building and packaging. This is a huge investment graph if we look at. Very few have taken that risk as a family business, and Chitle took that risk. And now what we see is all success stories, but beneath that there is a huge capital and there is, a big model of funding. So how do you really fund your businesses as a family group? Do you also sort of look at it as a, the enterprise mode where you are bringing in the capital, or, how it is in the risk-taking models are?
Well, so I think as a family since the 70s, I think when we first invested in getting a milk pouch packing machine from France back then, it took 4 years to come to India just because of the licensing regulation in India, which was, say, pre-liberalization. The families come to realize that, unless you invest in technology and by technology, capital goods to manufacture large quantities, you can never really make sense of scale. So that's why we as a family have always been committed that, infra is what we create very well. Other avenues where we can partner, we'll partner better. So like our stores are franchise where the capital is being put up by the stores because our capital is invested into creating capacity and manufacturing systems. That is how we sort of prioritize where we want to allocate capital. And along with that, we also prioritize the idea that, how is the return on capital employed? So the ROC is a very important aspect where we know that, where do we want to place our bets into the future. So there is a small amount of risk. There is a high amount of analysis also that comes into it. And also there is a extremely high amount of experience that comes into it, which I credit our previous generation towards, where, they have now given us a free hand in terms of how we want to deploy capital. So it is the financial discipline that they put into the system, which has made the company cash rich, which has kept the company very healthy in terms of the balance sheet, helps us deploy capital at a very, very good cost. So now with capital, my firm belief is that if the capital is not churning, then it is lost capital. So, and if your business is not churning at a better rate than markets, then you should rather invest that capital in the markets. So, how do we gear our business up for this is something that we worked over the last 5 years. And I think we've been delivering those results all the time. And that is where I think all the financial systems are helping us support that because, the balance sheet is strong. So, I think one of my prime responsibilities as somebody who is managing this business is about making sure that we even build robust financial mechanisms inside the company where our growth is something that, we should be investing all the time in.
Wow. That's a wonderful, lookout to look at. So now, before we wind up, I'd like to ask you one advice question, especially when the family business, the scale of family businesses that we are looking out, and anybody right now who is, looking to dream out that path, what is the advice as a fourth generation scale of businessman that you have for them?
Well, I think I would say is that be patient. I think especially something that's lasted many generations, it will last without too much interference from you as well. Maybe it will not grow, but it will last. So when you want to come and try to add a value to an organization that has been established much before that you were born as a fourth generation partner or somebody, you need to see that, are you actually ensuring that whatever mandate or legacy you have is being taken to a better height than what it is today. And elevating that is your responsibility. Taking care of that legacy is your responsibility. and making sure that you build onto your legacy rather than collapse your legacy is the more important aspect to it.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen overnight, and that is why you need to pick your battles. You need to choose measurable goals, and as you deliver better, you'll start getting better at it, and you'll be given better responsibility. But it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a decade, maybe 15 years for you to be at that spot. So if you invest that well, then I think you are financially much well off than you can ever imagine yourself to be as a 20-year-old trying to join a family business.
And also the grooming structure, I would like to, take that part into the consideration. The people who are planning to hand over that business for the future generation or whatever, what should be the grooming structure that should be there in the family?
So what I would say is that, at least in my case, and I think what we've formalized as a family as well, is that nobody really comes into the leadership role before they put in a certain amount of years, even in spite having the family surname. So if they're not putting those many years, not doing those many divisions, not handling those many role profiles, they will not get to be qualified to that. And while doing that way, they might be shareholders of the business, but they are not entitled to be acting like owners there. So if they are managers or they are having people reporting above them who are professionals, they need to understand the decorum that this is a professionally run company. So it might be family owned, but this is professionally run. And where the family person is also professional trying to deliver what they are supposed to do there. So how do we make them accountable for this is where I think designing that becomes very important for the previous generation to think about. If they design it well, I think the next generation is so globally exposed, so competent, so much more aware about what is happening across the world, and so uninhibited in terms of their approach. Because like say my father's generation, who till 1991, the country was a restricted country. The license Raj was norm. So they were restricted by design of the country itself. So in comparison, 2024, as a nation, India is so ambitious in its global aspirations that we live in a different era. So I think we come with that ambition. So when that is backed with the right design and the framework, I think we can deliver a lot better than what our previous generation ever had a chance to deliver upon.
Right.
So utilizing that and being aware of that is very important, is what I would say.
Yeah, well, thank you for that advice. And I think it was a wonderful to talk to Indraneel today.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, especially looking out a business that home-owned and family-grown, expanded family. And now there are multiple people joining. His friends and everyone is on the board today. And we look at there is a different emotion inside the office. And that same emotion is reflecting in the product. Starting with the quality and everything, those we can see as a structural benchmarks that every business will anyways avail. But what we say is the social moisture that should start from the back office to front office. And that's what the Chitle is, all about, the trust and that family bonding. So when they say that it is a next to the family, it means next to the family to them. So thank you, Indraneel, for all your
thank you for
wisdom that you just spilled out. And I'm sure that this has helped our audience, and especially the homegrown and the family-owned businesses, that they're looking forward what exactly we need to do further. Maybe you need to change your rituals at home for your kids to groom up. Maybe you need to start a different type of a school decorum that, Indraneel got as a practical handshakes. And many people want to, and probably they are not so aware. But, spilling these beans can make them aware and take their journey to the next heights. So thank you for being so passionate about your family business and expanding it. And good luck for your globe outlet to malls that are coming into the picture. And we are looking forward to explore them. And I don't really have to make an India trip to test different type of snacks.
Thanks, Pranali. I think we as Indians are traveling across the world, we want to be there with them as a tool to help the world see the Indian culture and the depth that our culture carries.
Yeah.
So we are that window to India is what we want to be.
Wonderful. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thanks, Pranali. Thanks for coming.